Well, part two of our chat here with Chris Robertshaw, and we're talking about the Expol report. Of course, the whole thing's been going on this tribunal, which you, as you mentioned, got, or not you personally, but someone put freedom of information in.
I didn't do it.
No, someone did. And you got a copy of it anyway.
Yeah.
This is the Expol report, which said there was nothing really of note. What went on, it was okay, and it passed muster. And as we keep using that term, there's nothing here to see, move on.
Yeah, and King's Counsel Devonshire, on behalf of the government, rushed out into, and he knew what he was doing, rushed out into the public arena through the tribunal hearing saying, you know, there's no criminal charges, nothing to see here. Now, the Expol report is available to anybody who wants to read it. It's on the FOI website. So
it's basically looking at, was there any underhand on this paperwork about what was there? And
what was asked by the tribunal was quite simple. We want the metadata, please, on certain documents which were effectively Z309, Z471 and Z475.
Right. And months later they came back with an answer.
And that's all that was required of them. But the government chose, as I described in your previous piece, that they brushed that aside and said, no, Expol are going to do an investigation. They spent £68,000 of government money, which they didn't need to spend, and produced a report. Now, I've read the report, and if I may, I give you some subjective opinion
it's
about...
It's all over to you. Yes, I should say this is his opinion.
Yeah.
Don't get me into trouble. What did you find out?
Well, I'm the first to say, clearly, that the documentation relating to this report concerns a time of where officers in government were under extreme pressure, and there's no doubt about that at all. It was
during the COVID.
Yeah, beginning of the COVID period, particularly around the time of March the 13th to the March the 16th, Friday the 13th to Monday the 16th of March 2020. So we're right back. Governments under the cosh trying to respond to this devastating event, the pandemic, and you are bound to see certain errors occur at that time in process. It was rushed from time to here and there. There were new organisations and groups being set up, and so you have to make serious allowances. I'm personally comfortable to make the allowances with regard to the date entries on Z309 as being unfortunate errors, and that's what the Expol report says, and I'll sort of go with that.
You will?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, but to me, just being cynical, that just sounds convenient, almost slightly, that, you know, an error happened but wasn't intentional. I believe it was it was a genuine mistake. Okay. Where officers were working under intense pressure, and I've tried to imagine myself in those circumstances myself, and how easily it would have been for me to have made a mistake as a politician. The one I'll skip on 471, but the one I really want to focus on is Z475. Which is?
Well, that's what were the minutes of a meeting held, and I better get my glasses out here, minute of a meeting held on Monday the 16th of March. And we have before us two options.
Who's it between and all this, yes?
This is a group of officers gathering on Monday the 16th of March, I think it was the afternoon, dealing with a whole ream of issues as to what should happen next, where, how, who should do what. Tremendous pressure. Undoubtedly. Now, I've read both of them. They are very different.
Sorry, this is maybe the same document or what?
It's the same meeting, and they are completely different documents.
Okay, which is which then? One's come from one source, one's come from another source?
One is, well, I'm not going to name officer names, no. Of course, but this second one is Z475, okay, and the other one is documents in the tribunal marked pages 1465, 66 and 67. I'll refer to that one first. Having been, as it were, engaged in government for a number of years, reading through this one, it very much looks like an honest, contemporaneous report that was dealing with a whole range of things. It has the notes made, and it has thereafter a list of actions, and it's a credible document. And I'm personally, my own subjective opinion, personally of the view that was an attempt that day to collect the meeting in a form of minutes, deal with it as quickly as possible, and distribute it to all those concerned. And then we turn to the second one, Z475. And this is where it becomes very, very strange and slightly spooky.
And yet again, this is the same time, the same.
It's exactly the same meeting, right. Assembled by somebody different.
Yes, somebody else's notes, basically. Is it?
No, it's somebody else's minutes, and this is what was picked up by the Ranson team, because it said that this one says, the other one doesn't. This one says that it was held under MS Teams. But the point was, and this is where they picked it up, MS Teams wasn't being used at that time. So that top bit is incorrect. If you compare and contrast the two sets of attendees, they're different. There are some who attended both. It's the same meeting. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's say that that's to a degree an unfortunate
error. You love this term, human error.
Human error.
Someone's left off somebody.
But then after that, an Expol report agrees with this, that actually there are very few similarities between the two reports. So you come to the conclusion, how could this document present this second one, Z475? How could it possibly have been presented to the tribunal as a factual document? But then you deal with the metadata issue. And the metadata issue, this is where it really becomes a concern.
And that was meant to be the big smoking gun on this whole thing, wasn't it? The metadata wasn't adding up on certain documents that were being put in?
Not
saying these ones, just...
The tribunal hadn't got the metadata, had it? That's what it was looking for. Yeah. And the metadata on this report here, this is the...
Sorry, metadata explains what to people?
Well, what happens is when you and I send a message or an email or construct a document, more to the point, you will see what you've typed, okay, but if you then address it in a different way, you can then see that screen, as it were, as I understand, as long as you press Save As, it then documents when you did that. Right. It dates it. Yeah. So that's part of the metadata. Okay. And not necessarily using the technical terms correctly.
No, but you get a timeline then.
I've got the message over, I think. So the metadata for this rather strange set of minutes, again conducting it or considering exactly the same meeting with a completely different set of information on it, was actually created on the 7th of October 2021. That's what the metadata indicates, and that's 18 months later.
I don't know where to begin with this one.
You don't know. No,
because we're dealing with things that can be libelous or slanderous or whatever you want to call it if you're not careful.
It's in the public arena. But
Expol said it was just a mistake, right? Is that what we're still saying now?
They don't
in their terminology?
Expol don't really address this.
But they had to. Surely that was the whole point of
what Expol says, I think I'm fair in saying that their answer to this is, there were two different people attending the meeting with different perspectives. So, come on. Now let me listen, Paul. Let's just get to the nub on this one, please.
Please.
As somebody who's worked at board level for a considerable number of years in the private sector and responsible for producing, just imagine this, producing minutes, my duty would have been to make sure that I, to the best of my ability, captured the intent of that meeting against the order paper that the board had. It is then required that I would always make sure that I assemble those minutes within the shortest period of time possible, and that the other directors then were able to sign those minutes off within a reasonable period of time. Now, I can just imagine a situation where if that company ended up in a court of law in a way that related to the minutes as produced, that I had the audacity to produce a set of minutes 18 months later, different to what actually happened on the occasion. Not only would I immediately lose my job, but actually I would be subject to criminal
Okay. Were these backdated? This does it say?
No, it doesn't.
Produced in 2021, but
no,
referring to the thing, or did they make no attempt to?
These minutes were produced, refer to the meeting of Monday the 16th of March 2020, but the metadata says it was created 18 months later.
Right. Probably the biggest question here then is, and I'm not saying you should answer this, you can give an opinion, is this a forgery?
I'm not going to answer the question.
That's, I know, because it's just too big a question to almost. I mean, that is a legal issue.
It needs to be thoroughly investigated.
I can ask the question, but we can't.
It needs to be thoroughly investigated because the Expol report, in my opinion, gently skips past it.
But that's what they were there to do, surely. It's so annoying.
You mean the company that was paid £68,000 to produce a report that seems to clear the government has left open the matter of were these minutes constructed?
But that's what they were
much later.
That was the whole plan, was to find out exactly what had gone on. There was definitely a whiff of things being concocted. I think that word was used quite a few times, wasn't it?
I wonder whether King's Counsel Devonshire, representing the government, when he was waving this, metaphorically speaking, waving this paper saying nothing to see here, I wonder whether he actually read that report. Yeah. He probably just flicked to the executive summary, which says there are no criminal charges. There is no reason that any criminal charges should be applied following our investigation. End of.
If there was a forgery involved, then, as you already said, someone could have easily lost their job over this, nothing else, because
it's more
concoction.
No, wait a minute. I'm going to steer away from officers here completely.
I just said someone losing their job. A minister could have been fired or anything. I don't know. Whoever takes the final rap for these things. It's so serious.
Well, hang on a second. One of the people at the highest point of all of this, Catherine Magson, was the one who said, "Well, I'm not subject to Manx jurisdiction,"
so she wouldn't attend. And she was the one that also said she would like the piles sent back to her, wasn't it, before going in any further. I'll go so carefully. We should put allegedly down here. First of all, Expol's done their job. They've given the report in, and it's been agreed.
You have to put the two pieces that we've done today together.
Yeah.
Because there is a clear link between the two. The second one deals with Z475, and the first one deals with the behaviour of the AG's department in all of this, which I personally consider has been disgraceful. And that's why in the first session I said that I'm mindful now to write to Parliament, to the Constitutional, Legal and Justice Committee, and ask it, is it satisfied here with an AG's department that advises the Council of Ministers, that advises each and every department, that advises Parliament in Tynwald, both Keys and Legco and Tynwald itself, to the exclusion of everything else, having given itself complete control over all the legal advice being received and no opportunity for independent parliamentarians to take alternative views. At the heart of this is at the heart of the whole thing that I believe that the AG's department is now out. It's a bit of a monster. It's out of control, and Parliament must bring it back into control. And if you remember, one of the things the Constitutional Legal Justice Committee has said since I got Tynwald to set it up in the first place was, should the AGs actually be in Tynwald at all? And I'm pretty sure the conclusion was, well, there's a very strong case for him or her not to be. And it's beyond time now that the AG's department was brought under control. It's too much of a powerful singularity getting away with too much bad practice, and these two sessions today epitomise that. And they have got to respect the judiciary, and in this instance the judiciary is in the form of the tribunal. They've got to start behaving. AGs have got to start behaving themselves.
How can they rein it in, to use a word term which may not be the appropriate one, but how can they change the process of how the AG's department works here in the island? Who has the power?
Exactly right now, members in Tynwald when they look for legal advice, either in a department or in Tynwald, they look to the AG, and the AG issues his judgment as it were ex cathedra. But behind that is this attitude in the department. Culturally, it's not sound. That we control this, and my goodness me, doesn't all this here today exhibit a department, the AG's department, trying to grab control of everything and interfere in an honest judicial process? It's a disgrace, in my opinion, Paul.
Can the tribunal refer to these differences of...
No, hang on. The tribunal's power here is limited, and rightly so, because, it's employment inequalities. All it can do is consider the information, and I think there's certain elements lacking in this Expol report. Consider this information. It can't issue a judgment on it. What it can say is, we believe this may be serious enough for others to consider this, and invite others to do so. It's not for the tribunal to issue a judgment on it.
It could be criminal, though, couldn't it? Making or concocting or anything like that,
well,
knowingly. Let's talk it in third-party terms, in general, not these documents. But if people make things up or to alter them or do anything, and it's got to be some sort of criminal offence.
The AG's duty here is to make sure that the information provided to something like a tribunal where departments of government are involved, it's fulsome, accurate and honest. And if it doesn't do this, then there is the potential for real serious problems. And all I'm saying to you today is all of this has brought, in my mind, to a head the failings of the AG's department. And I hope to goodness that our MHKs wake up to this.
Hardly any are talking about this so far. Hardly any. But
hopefully it seems to go past.
No, I'm hoping when it's all done and dusted, we'll hear people and their comments.
Well, I would like to have held all this off until after the remedy hearing and after the tribunal has completely finished its job, and then I would have gone to the Constitutional, Legal and Justice Committee saying, should you not be looking at this? This is your role. Yeah. Goodness me, that's why that committee was set up. However, because the AG, it must have been, the AG allowed the Freedom of Information to expose this Expol report before the tribunal has properly considered it. It's opened it up now.
And we've got to keep remembering that every time we thought we were going to move on last time, suddenly another roadblock was put in the way. Another sort of attempt was put in place, wasn't it? To proceed with the proceedings almost. And
the laughable appeals, you mean?
That's what I'm talking about. If you just look at the whole thing in general, it leaves such a terrible taste in most people's mouths. The Isle of Man is not being transparent and honest and open. And it's just not good enough, right?
What I want to say to you is something beyond this particular case here, which has brought it to a head simply because somebody's had the courage and determination to stand up to this system, which is bullying and suppressing individual people within government and effectively beyond. I was 12 years in MHK. Too often I came against issues where I didn't think people were being treated properly and fairly. And it's the power and resource that the AG's department have got that places people in such difficult circumstances. I mean, 68,000 pounds to spend on a report that wasn't necessary in the first place. What can the individual citizen do against that sort of power and finance?
Yeah, but all those appeals and everything coming out of the public purse, wasn't it? Instead of just saying, let's see what's going on, rather than trying to block it. That was my whole point, and that's what the general public see, that there's just so many roadblocks being attempted to put in the way of this, to shut it down, not to be transparent, open.
And you can trace it all back to the AG.
Right. Okay, well, we've done two big sections there. I'll see you at the tribunal on Monday. We'll check our dates. And,
Monday, Tuesday and Friday.
Well, someone's changed it on me.
Wash my mouth out.
Someone's changed it because it definitely. I won't be there on the Friday, but you will, and I'll be there during the week as well. Last time we did this chit chat, I was in Australia. It's 3:00 in the morning. Just so you know, because people said I looked dreadful because
your pink tie. Yeah.
My tie. Well,
was it your tie? Was it?
It was only tie. I took it to Australia with me, and it's 3:00 in the morning. I thought it was dedication.
You did remarkably well.
To be honest, it was so annoying not being there. And that's why I'm really annoyed if it is on Friday. But anyway, on that note, let's leave it. But let's really hope we can conclude this soon. Because obviously when they finish this week, they go away to make their final report. But
and that might take some time.